Absolutely. Here's a high-energy, attention-grabbing introduction for your speech. Have you ever wondered why so many people struggle year after year, working hard but never truly moving forward? The truth is harsh, but it's a truth you need to hear if you want to break free from the chains that are holding you back. Most people don't fail because they lack talent, opportunity, or resources. They fail because they get stuck in patterns, fears, and habits that silently control their lives. Today, I'm going to reveal the hard truths about why people stay stuck their entire life, and more importantly, how you can break free. If you listen closely, by the end of this speech, you'll understand what's been keeping you trapped, and you'll have the knowledge and mindset to finally take control of your life. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn has the power to transform everything. Fear is the invisible chain that holds most people in place, keeping them trapped in the same routines, habits, and circumstances for years, sometimes decades. It is not just the fear of failure itself, but the fear of discomfort, judgment, and uncertainty that stops action before it even begins. When people cling to their comfort zones, they convince themselves that staying where they are is safer, easier, or smarter. The problem is that comfort zones feel safe precisely because they are familiar, not because they are productive or empowering. Every time a person avoids risk or change, the mind receives a signal that reinforces limitation. And over time, this repeated avoidance solidifies into a life pattern that feels impossible to break. Comfort zones are deceptive because they mask inactivity as stability. A person may believe that doing the same thing every day, avoiding challenges, and staying safe will protect them from failure, but in reality, it prevents growth and keeps potential untapped. Fear is magnified by imagination. The mind projects worst-case scenarios that are often far from reality, and these imagined threats create emotional paralysis. People tell themselves stories of what could go wrong, how others might judge them, or how they might disappoint themselves or others. And the brain responds as if those stories are real, shutting down courage and creativity. This fear also intersects with habits and social conditioning. From childhood, many are taught to play it safe, follow rules, and avoid mistakes. While some structure is necessary, it often becomes a lifelong internal narrative that equates caution with wisdom. As a result, hesitation becomes the default, and action feels dangerous. Opportunities for growth, advancement, and transformation are passed by because the mind prioritizes comfort over possibility. Fear distorts perception, making the unknown seem threatening rather than exciting or promising. Breaking free from this invisible chain requires conscious effort and awareness. It is not enough to wish for change. One must deliberately move toward discomfort, challenge assumptions, and risk failure to build courage. Each small action outside the comfort zone weakens fear's control, retrains the brain, and expands the boundaries of what is possible. By confronting fear consistently, individuals gradually realize that the perceived dangers were far smaller than imagined, and that growth, confidence, and achievement lie just beyond the borders of comfort. Fear will always exist, but those who refuse to let it dominate their choices create momentum, opportunity, and transformation. Every person who has moved from stagnation to success has first faced the hard truth that comfort is a trap, and that only deliberate action outside of it leads to true progress. Clarity and vision are the compass that guide people toward progress, and without them, it is almost impossible to move forward in life. Most people remain stuck simply because they do not know exactly what they want, or their goals are vague and undefined. When the mind has no clear direction, energy and effort are scattered, focus is lost, and small distractions begin to feel like major obstacles. Uncertainty about the future creates hesitation, and hesitation prevents action. Without a compelling vision, daily routines and responsibilities take over, and individuals drift along rather than deliberately steering their lives toward growth and success. Vision is not just about setting goals. It is about creating a mental picture of the life you want to live, the person you want to become, and the impact you want to make. Without this image, motivation fades quickly because the brain has no target to aim for. People often attempt change without defining their why or understanding what success would truly look like for them. This lack of clarity makes challenges feel insurmountable, and even small setbacks can trigger doubt and abandonment of effort. When the destination is unclear, it becomes easy to rationalize staying in familiar but unproductive patterns. The absence of vision also affects decision-making. Every choice, no matter how small, is influenced by what the mind believes is important. Without a clear vision, decisions are often reactive rather than proactive. People end up prioritizing immediate comfort, approval from others, or short-term satisfaction over meaningful progress. This creates a cycle where time and energy are invested in low-value activities, further reinforcing stagnation. Even when opportunities arise, they are overlooked or ignored because the mind does not recognize them as steps toward a bigger purpose. Clarity and vision also influence confidence. When people know exactly what they want, they can approach challenges with intentionality and courage. Decisions become easier because they are guided by a consistent framework rather than uncertainty. Focus sharpens, and the mind begins to notice resources, solutions, and strategies that align with the vision. Conversely, without clarity, even capable individuals feel overwhelmed, stuck, or indecisive. They wait for external guidance or circumstances to dictate their next move instead of taking control of their own path. Developing clarity and vision requires deliberate reflection, goal setting, and the willingness to define personal priorities. It is about creating a detailed mental roadmap that the mind can follow and the heart can commit to. When this clarity exists, momentum builds naturally and the path forward becomes visible. Without it, no matter how capable or talented a person may be, life feels like a series of random events rather than a journey toward meaningful achievement. Limiting beliefs and negative self-talk are among the most powerful forces that keep people trapped in the same place year after year. From an early age, experiences, cultural conditioning, and the opinions of others shape the narratives we tell ourselves about what is possible. These beliefs often operate silently in the background, influencing decisions, emotions, and actions without conscious awareness. When someone believes they are not capable, not worthy, or destined to fail, the mind interprets opportunities and challenges through that lens. Every hesitation, every moment of doubt, and every small excuse becomes a confirmation of the belief rather than a signal to take action. Negative self-talk reinforces these limiting beliefs. The internal dialogue that constantly says, I can't, I'm not good enough, or this is too hard programs the mind to expect failure. Thoughts are not neutral, they carry emotional weight, and the brain treats repeated statements as truth. Over time, these repeated messages shape identity. A person may not consciously recognize that their belief is holding them back, but the results of their life reflect it. Opportunities are ignored, risks are avoided, and potential remains untapped, all because the mind has been conditioned to think within the boundaries of limiting. Beliefs also distort perception. Challenges feel insurmountable. Criticism feels like confirmation of inadequacy, and success achieved by others is often seen as luck or unfair advantage rather than something attainable. This distorted perception reinforces fear and hesitation. Individuals unconsciously create environments and make choices that align with their limiting beliefs, which traps them further. Even when resources, skills, or opportunities exist, these mental barriers prevent action, creating a self-fulfilling cycle where stagnation appears inevitable. Breaking free from these constraints requires conscious awareness and active reprogramming of thought patterns. It begins with identifying beliefs that no longer serve a purpose and questioning their validity, asking new, empowering questions like, what if I am capable? Or what is possible if I try differently? Reorients focus and shifts emotional response. Positive self-talk, repetition of empowering thoughts, and visualization of success gradually replace the old mental patterns. Action taken consistently while maintaining these new thought patterns reinforces the belief in capability, creating momentum and confidence. Limiting beliefs are not facts, they are assumptions, often learned from external influences and repeated mental patterns. When challenged and replaced with empowering thoughts, the mind begins to operate as a tool for growth instead of a barrier. Over time, this shift in internal dialogue transforms identity, emotions, actions, and ultimately the trajectory of life. The key is awareness, deliberate practice, and the courage to think differently than the patterns that have kept one stuck. Procrastination and inconsistent action are two of the most common reasons why people remain stuck in life, even when they have talent, resources, or knowledge. The mind often convinces itself that waiting for the right time, gathering more information, or preparing just a little longer is necessary before taking action. This illusion of preparation creates a false sense of productivity while delaying real progress. Every day that passes without decisive action allows fear, doubt, and comfort to grow stronger, making it even harder to start. Inconsistent effort creates a pattern where goals remain out of reach, and motivation fluctuates without ever producing significant results. Procrastination is not simply laziness, it is often a coping mechanism for fear, uncertainty, or overwhelm. When a task feels too difficult or the outcome too uncertain, the mind seeks short-term relief by avoiding it. The temporary comfort of distraction or delay is reinforced each time it occurs, creating a habit that is difficult to break. Over time, small delays accumulate and entire opportunities are lost. People may feel busy, but they are not moving closer to meaningful progress. In contrast, consistent action, even if imperfect, creates momentum and confidence, making challenges feel smaller and goals more achievable. Inconsistent action also undermines belief in oneself. When people start a project or attempt to change but fail to follow through, the mind interprets the behavior as evidence of inadequacy. Motivation spikes temporarily, but without follow-through, results do not appear, reinforcing the idea that change is impossible. This cycle creates frustration and stagnation, which often leads to giving up entirely. On the other hand, when action is consistent, even small steps compound over time, producing visible results that strengthen confidence and reinforce positive behavior. Breaking free from procrastination requires a shift in mindset from perfection to progress. Waiting for ideal conditions or complete certainty guarantees inaction, whereas starting immediately with small, deliberate steps builds momentum. Discipline and focus are developed through repetition, not inspiration alone, creating routines, setting deadlines, and committing to action regardless of AR or doubt rewires the mind to prioritize results over comfort. Consistency is also reinforced by accountability and measuring progress. Tracking small wins, celebrating effort, and reviewing outcomes helps maintain momentum and reduces the tendency to delay. Over time, the brain begins to associate action with reward rather than anxiety, transforming hesitation into habitual forward motion. When procrastination and inconsistent action are replaced by deliberate, repeated effort, stagnation ends, and growth becomes inevitable, showing that progress is not a matter of luck, but of choice and persistence. Dependency on external validation is a subtle but powerful factor that keeps many people trapped in the same place, unable to take ownership of their lives or pursue their true potential. From a young age, individuals are conditioned to seek approval from parents, teachers, peers, and society at large. This need for acceptance becomes deeply ingrained, shaping decisions, priorities, and even self-perception. When people rely on others to tell them they are good enough or that their choices are right, they surrender their power to external forces. Instead of making decisions based on internal clarity, values, or purpose, they measure their actions against the expectations and judgments of others. This dependency limits risk-taking and innovation because fear of criticism or rejection overrides the desire for growth. People may avoid pursuing dreams, changing careers, or speaking up for their ideas because the approval of others feels more important than their own progress. Over time, this creates a life that is safe but unfulfilling, where potential remains untapped and talents go unnoticed. Even when opportunities arise, the need for validation slows decision-making or prevents action entirely. The brain associates success with approval from others rather than personal achievement, which undermines intrinsic motivation and keeps individuals in a cycle of stagnation. Negative self-perception often accompanies this reliance on external validation. When approval is withheld or criticism is given, it feels like a personal failure, reinforcing self-doubt and insecurity. The individual begins to equate worth with recognition, popularity, or praise, rather than with effort, growth, or resilience. This creates a feedback loop where actions are constantly measured against external opinion, and the mind becomes dependent on others to confirm direction, progress, and value. Breaking free from this dependency requires cultivating internal validation, self-trust, and personal accountability. It begins with asking questions like, what do I truly want, and what would I do if no one else's opinion mattered? By aligning actions with values, purpose, and personal standards, individuals shift the source of motivation from outside themselves to within. Confidence grows as small decisions are made independently, and the mind learns to trust its own judgment. When the need for external validation is replaced with self-trust and internal motivation, a person becomes empowered to take consistent, courageous action regardless of approval or criticism. Decisions are guided by clarity, vision, and values rather than fear of judgment, and opportunities for growth, leadership, and success become visible and attainable. Dependency on others diminishes, and life becomes a reflection of personal potential rather than outside opinion, showing that true freedom and progress begin when factors can influence life. Consistently placing responsibility outside oneself creates a mindset of helplessness. When the mind believes that change depends on something or someone else, motivation decreases, action stalls, and personal power is surrendered. This avoidance of responsibility also manifests in decision-making. People may wait for permission, guidance, or perfect conditions before acting. They hesitate to take ownership of projects, goals, or personal development because the fear of failure is too strong to confront without external approval. Over time, this pattern becomes habitual, and inaction feels safer than risk. Even when opportunities arise, the instinct to defer responsibility prevents people from stepping into them, and life feels stuck or repetitive. The mind becomes conditioned to seek excuses rather than solutions, and the cycle continues. Avoiding responsibility is often reinforced by cultural, social, or emotional conditioning. From childhood, many are taught to obey, conform, and avoid mistakes. While guidance and structure are necessary, they can create an unconscious habit of relying on others to dictate decisions or outcomes. As adults, this translates into waiting for circumstances to change, hoping someone else will solve problems, or believing that success is the result of chance rather than deliberate effort. The result is stagnation, frustration, and a persistent sense of being trapped. Taking responsibility, in contrast, empowers individuals. When a person acknowledges that their thoughts, actions, and choices are the primary determinants of their life, a shift occurs in mindset and behavior. Accountability creates focus, ownership, and momentum. It transforms challenges into opportunities and failures into lessons. The act of taking responsibility signals to the mind and body that one is capable of action, problem-solving, and growth, which generates confidence and resilience over time. Responsibility also reinforces control over results. By accepting that outcomes are largely determined by personal effort, focus, and persistence, individuals stop waiting for permission or perfect conditions. Decisions become proactive rather than reactive, and actions align with purpose and goals. Over time, life begins to reflect the choices, discipline, and accountability of the individual rather than the whims of circumstances or the opinions of others. Avoiding responsibility keeps people stuck, but embracing it unlocks freedom, power, and consistent progress. Absolutely. Here's a powerful, inspiring conclusion for your speech, ending with a motivating and grateful note. Now you know the hard truth. Most people stay stuck not because they lack talent, resources, or opportunity, but because of fear, hesitation, limiting beliefs, and avoidance of responsibility. The moment you take ownership of your thoughts, your actions, and your life, everything changes. Growth begins when you confront fear instead of hiding from it, when you take consistent action instead of waiting for perfect conditions, and when you trust yourself instead of seeking constant validation from others. The power to break free, to move forward, and to create the life you've always imagined has always been inside you. The choice is yours. Will you continue to stay stuck, or will you finally take control and step into the life you deserve? Good luck on your journey. Stay disciplined, stay courageous, and never underestimate your own power. Thank you for giving me your time today and for committing to the path of transformation. Remember, the moment you take responsibility for your life is the moment everything starts to change.